Welcome to the CyberJA podcast, the place where we discuss all things cybersecurity and GRC. I am Richard Perry, your cybersecurity and GRC enthusiast. The aim of this podcast is to provide a meaningful value-added platform via which upcoming cybersecurity professionals like yourself can gain insights from various topics covering cybersecurity and GRC that will enable them to become professionals that the industry demands. Stay tuned for what next on the CyberJA podcast. We have someone joining us today on the CyberJA podcast that knows exactly how to illustrate various InfoSec concepts using cats. And when I say cats, guys, I mean CATS, literal cats, which I find very humorous. And those illustrations always get the point across and also to get my attention as it relates to those interesting posts that she makes on LinkedIn. And we're talking about none other than Jo Peterson. Jo, nice to have you on CyberJA.
Thank you so much for having me as a guest. Nice to be here.
Awesome. And it's also my pleasure to have these conversations with individuals like yourself within this vast industry who take this time from their busy schedule to have these conversations that can act as a catalyst to the growth and development of upcoming professionals within the overall InfoSec or cybersecurity space, depending on whichever area that they really want to aspire to excel in. And Jo, for people who do not maybe understand, when I look at your profile, it states that you are an engineer who helps clients scope, source, and vet solutions in cloud. Does cloud security and cybersecurity, and you're also a tech analyst. Quite a wide skill set for many people who are trying to get into this industry. So the big question for many people as it relates to the industry, how did this journey all began?
Oh, you mean what was my journey like?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I was lucky enough to serve in the US Air Force, and I got some of my technical credentials there in the Air Force. And then when I got out of the Air Force, I was able to translate some of those tech skills, i.e., the tech school that I went to and the credits that I got there, into a degree. At the same time, when I came out of the military, I went to work for one of the telcos as a core routing and switching engineer. So learned on the job, right? So I came up through the infrastructure side of the house. I didn't start doing data center work until 2000. I'm dating myself here. So, and I've been doing cloud since 2009. So a pretty long time. I jumped onto cloud right away. And what happened for me as I was going through my journey and getting certifications was, as I was architecting cloud workloads, I realized that folks were not implementing security controls, or if they were trying to retrofit premise-based security onto the cloud, which doesn't work because it's different in nature. So I got super interested in the cloud aspect of security in particular, not just cloud, but cloud security. So that's sort of what happened for me. So my day job, the thing that I spend most of my time on, is as an engineer working with clients to help them scope and source projects that they're working on. And that's primarily in the cloud security and cybersecurity space. So, yeah.
Okay, awesome. So when we think about there are various avenues or various aspects to security, we have on-prem and you have in the cloud security. Can you say, for example, what are those differences in terms of, is it the same experience in terms of actually executing, or for example, you are required to protect a on-premise versus in the cloud environment? Are we talking about the same skill set if it is that someone really wanted to do the things that you do?
So I'm hearing a couple different questions there. So let me try to let me try to get some clarification. If we're looking from the user's experience, we of course want that to be seamless for the user, right? We want that to be as easy as possible as security professionals for the user so that we encourage them to be more productive. Otherwise, they're just not, they're going to avoid things, right? Just like any human being would do, that they'll avoid things not to use it if it's too hard to get into, too hard to use, and therefore we risk productivity, right? So we want to make that journey as seamless as possible. But I think your question, and tell me if I'm getting this right, was more around, does it take the same skill set to secure an on-premise workload that it does in the cloud workload? Was that the question?
Yes, that's it.
So I think that anyone that has a basic understanding of security, is in a good spot. And I think the difference becomes, especially when we talk about cloud workloads. Let me back up. Most organizations are hybrid. Most organizations are not cloud native. So when we look at the people that are securing the infrastructure of a hybrid environment, they have to be versed in on-premise security, whether that's on their physical premise or in a data center, and cloud security. And then they additionally, and this one gets left out a lot, have to think about SaaS security, right? Because every one of us are using apps to log in and out of some sort or another, right? So we're really, it's not just on premise and it's not just in the cloud. We have to think about SaaS security as well. So I think that a good idea is always to keep leveling up your skill set via certification. Even if your shop is sort of later in, going to the cloud, it's a good idea to get yourself familiar with what's going to be needed for that, securing that cloud environment before it happens, because you're going to be more valuable to the organization. You're going to be more valuable to the workforce in general.
Sure, exactly. And one of the main reasons I asked this question is that I like for professionals when they actually venture into the industries that so often I see those silos existing, meaning that you might be employed within the space to do X, or they do not take that time to really understand the overall business, the overall, that having that holistic approach in that how it is that all of these pieces actually tie together in terms of within an hybrid environment or on-prem versus in the cloud, to have that overall understanding of the moving parts that actually makes a business or an organization function. So those are some of the things that I really need for upcoming professionals to really understand those fundamental principles and the benefits of actually having that holistic approach in terms of how it is that all of these elements actually work. So, which you have actually rightly addressed in your response. So, looking at all the various job roles that you have actually occupied so far, can you possibly, in a nutshell, just share with us in terms of your journey from one role to the next? How were you able to navigate your way in terms of the skill sets, the necessary training or certifications, your traditional or non-traditional maybe route that you actually took to get you to those various roles?
Well, you made such a great statement, and it's so layered with so many levels of truth. So I had the opportunity to speak to a friend who's a CISO yesterday, Mr. Bill Harmer of Craft Ventures. And I mentioned Bill because he said something that was such a good thing to say. He said, if I had to focus on one thing about cybersecurity to get my arms around coming into a new business, I would focus on the business goal. And I thought that was such an excellent way to shape it, because every one of us needs to understand the business goal. If not, we're chasing this and chasing that and chasing this, right? And we're not really understanding what the business wants to accomplish. And I thought that was so smart. So shout out to Bill. But The next thing that you said was also very layered and profound in that when I came up, we were very much in silos. If you were on the network team, then you were on the network team and you didn't talk to the security people at all.
Exactly.
You
Tell me about
didn't,
it.
you didn't eat lunch with those guys. They were a little off center. You weren't making friends with them. You weren't bringing them donuts on Friday, nothing. Okay. You talk to them. And in those days, security was the department of no, right? So, I mean, that's how those guys were known. What I've seen happen, and I'm really encouraged over time, is the coming together of job titles, much like you were intimating. So, maybe 5 years ago, we didn't really have a network security guy or gal. Now, today we do. That's someone's title. Maybe 5 or 10 years ago, we didn't have a DevSecOps professional, right? Where dev and security comes together. So we have formal titles for people that sort of intersect two worlds. And that's great. That's the breaking down of silos to me that's happening. And then I think the third thing that you commented on was like, how did it happen for me? So I believe in a combination of hands-on training or hands-on experience, formal training, right, college, and then certifications. And so I have an MBA and I have a master's in information technology. Because I have always thought that the business side of the equation was just as important as the technical side of the equation. And let me get up on my soapbox for a minute here. We do such a good job of training tech professionals that come out of tech school, but I feel like we let them down as they get promoted up the ladder because we don't teach them how to speak to the importance of security as a business imperative. So they can't communicate the importance sometimes of what they're doing to the dollars and cents of the business, right? So I think that we do them a disservice by not allowing them to sort of kind of have some sort of formal, and maybe there's companies that do a program in place that teaches them how to get in front of the board and not talk about bits and bytes, but talk about how this thing or that thing or this platform is going to, by not having it, negatively impact the organization. And so I think that that's kind of important that we all try to think about what we're doing from a business perspective, like you said, right? That's pretty important. So I hope I answered the question.
Sure, definitely on point. And you have actually made a very important point there. And looking back at my past job roles, career to this point, so often I was instructed, I mean, based on the various teams that I was a part of, do X, do Y. I know all the technical stuff. I did the configurations. I knew various firewall stuff and servers and the installations and all of these things. We need to have all these systems interconnected. We need to be providing the necessary services. However, I have never really been exposed to why. Why are we doing this? It's all about security, blocking this port, preventing this traffic, incoming, outgoing. Things must be working, but why it is that we're doing what we're doing. And I think that is one of the links that are, as you rightly said, that is missing from the overall security space and I definitely see where things are changing, and I definitely, this is one of the main reasons I have these conversations, that the upcoming generation would actually have some sort of change in their programs and their mindsets as it relates to do not think of security or whatever aspect of the overall InfoSec world as just a silo, but see the big picture of why it is that we're doing what we're doing in terms of if you are installing servers, switches, installing applications, it's for the purpose of allowing that organizations to meet its overall objectives. And I think that is key to any organization. Once you understand that principle, then whatever it is that you're doing, whether technically or non-technically, will make more sense, and you're able to appreciate the overall process of your particular job role. So, which I've
Yeah.
rightly said. So, based on your journey so far within the industry, you must would have experienced some amount of challenges along your path in terms of possibly developing your skill sets or maybe getting to that next job role. Can you possibly share some of those challenges and how it is that you were able to overcome to excel in your career development?
Yeah. So let me just say this, 12% of the security job force is female, just 12%. And I know it's changing and it's growing, and that's great. And shout out to all the female CISOs that I know, because you're awesome. But right. But I want to say that, and this might sound a little funny. First of all, my best bosses were male. They were the most encouraging, and they were the best advocates for me. And then when I realized that my uniqueness was my power, being female in a male dominated space was maybe my power, it was very freeing for me. And I realized that I could maybe control a little bit of my experience by bettering myself, meaning more certification, so that when I came to the table, I was knowledgeable with my male peers. And I want it to be thought of, it sort of always pushed me to be better, because I wanted to be able to have a conversation and have it be meaningful for them and meaningful for me. And I didn't want anyone on my team to feel like I was a weight. I wanted them to feel like I was their partner, or I was someone that they could depend on and trust and knew would do a good job for their clients. So I put the burden on me to, each year I actually come up with a list of certifications that I want to take and accomplish for myself. And I think that by doing that, by each of us doing that, we all can only get a little bit better in this tech world that is moving at breakneck speed. I mean, you know, I can't even tell you the pace of change that I experience today versus the pace of change that even I experienced 10 years ago. It feels accelerated to me. What about to you?
I totally agree. At times I wonder, how am I going to be able to keep up? At times it's almost like I am saying to myself, call it quit. And then I say, no, I can't. That's
Hey,
exactly the feeling that I am experiencing. Is like, how do I keep abreast with today AI, tomorrow there's a new technology, there is some new application that needs to be maybe patch. There are so many vulnerabilities that are existing. How do we keep abreast in ensuring that our organization, our people, our processes, our technologies are actually safe? So it's indeed a challenge. So, but I think one of the best strategies is, well, speaking from my perspective, depending on the organization, depending on the individual or the business that you're working with and the technological infrastructure that they have in place, then you adjust yourself accordingly. So that's one of my best approach. I mean, it might be something else for you, but you have made mention about the fact that you took a number of certifications, and the conversations surrounding certifications are always somewhat very controversial at times. So from your perspective, what it is that actually guided your decision as it relates to certifications?
look, I'm a lifelong learner, and I know that people say, well, gosh, on paper they know their stuff. Maybe when it comes, when it comes to sitting in front of a keyboard, they don't, right? And I get that. But I go back to what's my philosophy. My philosophy is to be a lifelong learner. And I feel like, okay, maybe I don't have a full grasp of the situation and maybe it's not my number one area of focus, but my hope is to have a meaningful conversation with a customer because that's who my customer is, right? An end user, customer, that I at least can understand their challenge and understand enough about their challenge to help them find a solution. Doesn't mean I have to be an expert, but I have to know what they're talking about. And I can't do that for them unless I keep up. It's that simple for me.
Exactly. So, and you have that's a very good note as it relates in terms of ending on, in terms of one of the things I also want um people within the industry to understand is that try to develop that mindset of your customers. You have internal customers, you have external customers. And when you really understand the service that you are delivering with your skill set, then you would take more, I would say, possibly pride in the skill set that you are developing and the level of service that you're delivering to both internal customers and your external customers. And by doing this, then you're able to become far more efficient in terms of excelling um, within your career journey. So, just one last question before we conclude this conversation. Um, what's that last possibly advice that you might have received in your career development that you possibly would want to share with someone in their career journey?
Oh, I thank you for asking that. I actually have a message for the females in IT listening. Um, Security pays well, ladies. It pays well. So it's not just an altruistic thing of, you know, changing a number, changing a perception. That all happens too. But, you know, mama needs a new pair of shoes. So go make some more money, ladies.
That's a very interesting note to end this on. So Joe, I mean, it was indeed my pleasure having this conversation with you, and I look forward to future conversations, not to mention those very interesting posts that you do.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure today.
Awesome. So everyone stay tuned, stay connected for all future recordings on the Cyber JA podcast.